Hello, my name is David Keck, and on October 23rd of 2014, I was a victim of a hate crime. Some friends had called me and wanted to go to our favorite place. It's kind of like our Cheers. It's a karaoke bar, and I decided to join them. I walked in, and I guess a stranger saw me, and he didn't like me. He didn't like the way I talked. He didn't like the way I walked, the way I dressed. Maybe he didn't like the songs I sang. But somehow a complete stranger could watch me and actually go out of his way to talk to me while the whole time he's planning my death. I was at the table with my friends and I excused myself to the restroom. That's when my attacker came up and started talking to me. He showed interest in something I was wearing that I had actually designed. So I gave him a business card and continued to the bathroom alone. After leaving the bathroom, I joined my friends. We finished our drinks, paid our tab, and we left together. Surveillance cameras show all of this, and it also shows my attacker leaving 3 minutes later. There are no cameras outside the door, so there's no footage of what happened from there. My friends do state that they seen me drive out of the parking lot by myself. The next thing I remember, I woke up in the hospital. I couldn't even open my eyes. Everything hurt. Several years ago, I was in a horrible car accident that actually killed 3 people in my family. My brother and I barely survived this car accident. My mother and my grandmother stated that when I woke up at the hospital after my attack, I was asking for my brother, afraid that he was hurt. I thought we were in that car accident. I was reliving those moments. Little did I know I was a victim of another tragedy. A girlfriend came to see me and she sat by the bed and she said that I just kept saying over and over that I was only trying to help him. So there came a point that the nurses had to ask everyone to leave the room. I was going to have a rape test. Would you believe the nurses didn't fully seal the door? And another friend walked in, seeing me fully exposed, going through the rape test. Because of him, because of a stranger, I keep getting violated. I keep getting embarrassed. I keep getting questions asked I don't know the answers to. I have to be told that someone, as well as foreign objects, have been inside me. My story, which was written based off of the rapist's confession, was now being told on the news. The news anchor stated that I came on to my attacker sexually, and that is what led him to beat me. I couldn't believe how much of the story was wrong, but because it was on the news, the public believed it. They blamed me. I was told I should be the one going to jail simply because I went to a straight bar. I started receiving death threats. People were saying they wanted to finish the job. I was accused of doing drugs, even though there was a drug test done in the ER and it came back negative. I started to blame myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe I deserved everything that was happening to me. I received a call from the girlfriend of my attacker. She told me that he actually used my phone standing over my body and called her, confessing to what he had done. She said he told her how I was flopping like a fish out of water, and he stood over me talking on the phone, on my phone, until he thought I was dead. Months after staying with my family and attempting to recover, I decided I wanted to go back to my apartment. I wanted to live alone. I wanted to try to find me again. I walked in, and there was blood everywhere. My handprints streaked down the hall where he dragged me from room to room. Blood was splattered on the cabinets and the walls where he was kicking and stomping my head. I cleaned up the blood the best I could. I then went and hid knives under every couch cushion, every drawer, beside every door. I then went into my bedroom. I wanted to lay down. There was blood on every blanket and pillow on my bed. The blood had soaked through the blankets, through the mattress. I had no choice but to lay down and sleep in the aftermath of my rape, so I can wake up tomorrow and face another day of discrimination. His story gets told on the news, and it's blaming me. He can walk without a walker, and I can't. He knows every detail of what happened to me, and I don't. I get to deal with his actions daily. I get blamed for being raped and being victimized. And I get to live with his fingerprints all over me and all over my home. Someone asked me what I would want to happen to him. Someone asked me if I would want him dead. And honestly, no, I don't want him physically dead. I just want him to feel like me. I want him to feel dead like me. My name is David Keck, and I am the host of Surviving Abuse Podcast, and this is my story. Here we are, finally doing it. Thank you for being a part of this with me.
Absolutely. The moment you asked me, I couldn't think of anything else I'd rather do. I want to be part of your healing process, whatever that is.
I'm David Keck.
And I'm Heather Crutchfield.
Welcome to Surviving Abuse Podcast. Let's review some statistics.
82% of all juvenile victims are female. 90% of adult rape victims are female. Females ages 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault.
Researchers have found that at least 1 in 6 men have experienced sexual abuse or assault, whether in childhood or as adults. And this is probably a low estimate since society doesn't want to accept the fact that women are sexually abused, let alone a man. Some people even believe that men cannot be raped. Same goes for hate crimes. Society just wants to sweep it under the rug and not discuss it.
In this podcast each week, we will hear victim statements from men and women who have experienced some sort of abuse.
Heather and I will be discussing some very heavy topics. We are not therapists, nor are we doctors. We are just victims and supporters of victims who want to provide a safe place. We do want to mention the trigger warnings that will rise with this discussion. So we did just hear my victim statement. And I guess like one thing that I've always wondered that we've never discussed is like how you actually found out about it and your experience through it. I know that I've obviously talked a lot about it, but it's always been me sharing my trials and tribulations through it without actually hearing your side of it. So how did it come about with you? Do you remember?
I remember bits and pieces, and granted, it has been a minute since it all happened, but I feel like it was probably your friend Lisa, our friend Lisa, who became my friend too. Same way, because I met her. She was one of my bartenders, and
there's a trend.
There is a trend, and just speaking with her, she was worried about you, and she said that she hadn't heard from you. You guys had some plans, and when we found out, I can't remember exactly what happened, whether there was another phone call from Lisa or another friend that told me they found you and you were in the hospital. But however it was that I found that out, I remember that there wasn't a moment, and I mean, because you were in such bad condition from the moment that I heard about it, that it felt like I needed to go ahead and get to the hospital right then.
Like I don't remember this. I just remember you sharing it with me. And one thing that my therapist has always said is when people first go through a tragedy, um, that the statements that they make is usually the truth. That their memories haven't left them yet. They've not blocked anything yet.
Right.
And all you said that all I kept saying to you was I was
You were
just trying to
just
help
trying
him.
to help. That is all you said. And I was there when you came too. Like you hadn't really regained any kind of consciousness at the point when I had gotten there, and I was one of the very few people who was in the room when you did wake up. And when you did, those were the first words out of your mouth. Were I was just trying to help, and you kept repeating it.
Yeah.
Like that was the only thing that you would say. And just seeing you lie there, I mean, your eyes were swollen, your face was swollen, you were black and blue, and the trauma that was just apparent, not to mention all of the stuff, that we find out later, of course, that you didn't know happened. Um, that we'll talk later about, I guess. But it was very traumatic seeing this and feeling like, because I've always been a protector, and feeling like I didn't have any control of the situation and not
Yeah.
being able to protect you. I mean, it just broke my heart.
Well, and I guess too that like no one knew what happened. Like my family told me that when they were contacted, they were told, "Oh, your son's been beat up." So they just thought maybe I had been mugged, that someone just took my wallet from a parking lot and hit me one time, and I called the cops and they had me go get evaluated. They didn't know what they were walking in on.
Right.
And were you in the room when, because I know that one of the times I had woken up, Brandon and I, my brother Brandon, we were in a car accident when I think I was 11 and he was 9. And it killed 3 people in my family. And when I woke up, I first thought my mother and my grandmother, where my eyes wouldn't open, I couldn't see, and I was not in my right mind at all. I thought they were actually nurses. I didn't realize that they were who they were. And they said that I was asking for my brother because I thought we were in the hospital from that car accident. Like my mind went all the way back to 20 something years ago.
The original trauma.
Yeah, yeah. And so I don't remember this either. A lot of the things I'll discuss are things that I know just from what people have shared with me, right? And so um, our friend Larry, who we'll be interviewing and talking with on several different topics, told me that he actually had to go to a nurse and ask her to change my pillow because it was covered in blood where I was still bleeding, and they didn't want to touch it. They didn't want to do it, and it. I think that it goes with the stereotypes that go with rape, that go with homosexuals. They wanted. I wasn't getting any kind of care. I was laying in my blood. Larry actually had to change my pillowcase and change my pillow himself.
And I think that may have come from when I got there. That was not the case. I didn't, if at least if it were, I didn't pick up on it because that's probably more of a train of thought that he might have versus one that I might have,
Right.
because of the situation, where my train of thought at that moment was revenge, really, and because I'm a protector.
Right. And if there's one thing you're good at,
Right.
it's revenge.
So So I mean, my main goal right then was to find out, are you okay? Are you going to be okay? Are you going to recover from this? And what can I do to help and fix the situation? Because I'm also a fixer. And I didn't, there wasn't a lot at that moment that I saw that was wrong with the cleanliness or the sanitation of the room. And I guess maybe I got there early where it hadn't
Right.
been, because in all reality, I mean, Lisa and I have known each other for so long. We probably didn't reach out to Larry for a little bit longer than
Right.
we reached out to one another.
Right.
Because, I mean, for her to call me, it's because if you weren't with her, you were with me.
Right. And she
And
knew, kind of backtracking a little bit, but she knew immediately something was wrong because I don't stand people up. I always have my phone on me. I text, I call. Someone always knows where I'm at and what I'm doing, especially if we have plans. And we had plans, and thank God we did because that's part of what saved my life.
right, because it was what, 18 hours
Yeah,
before
before my
they
body
found
was
you.
actually found. And so, some of they said that some of the brain damage that I had, even though it was temporary, was because of lack of oxygen. So there's, what if I'd have laid there longer? And there are even factors that we'll get into later that kept them from getting to me sooner. And so those are things that I battle with. Like one of my biggest fears, even still today, even though my memory pretty much has fully recovered, other than during the trauma part, but is when someone says, "Hey, remember when?" I immediately kind of freak out. You
Well,
know?
the funny thing, not that any of this is funny, but the funny thing about that is that, we joke about my memory too, because, I do tend to black out a little and I don't remember things. And I think that, like you and I have discussed before, is part of how I cope with things and how that I may not remember everything exactly the way that it happens because I tend to block things out again that I can't control.
Right.
And I let it go because if I don't, then it consumes me.
Right.
So, what I could do for you and what I can do for you is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And, you know, being here for you, I mean, it wouldn't have happened any other way, like I said, but being here for you from the minute that it happened.
Yeah.
For forever. I mean, you're my grandson's trustee on my will.
Right.
This is going to be,
We're family.
we're family.
And I remember once, and kind of moving forward a little bit, I remember the first time that I woke up after getting home, I had to, I obviously couldn't live in my apartment by myself. I couldn't stand or walk by myself. So I stayed with my grandmother because she had, a couple of bedrooms downstairs that was easy for me to access. And um, the first time I woke up in her bed, you had a chair pulled up right beside it. That was one of my first memories.
And I don't think that I had ever met your grandmother in person. You talked about her all the time.
She's my lady.
But
Yeah.
I don't believe before that moment that I had ever met Shirley.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she opened her door to me because she knew.
100%. And that is one of the positive things that I found is I will never forget the time that I was standing in her living room and there was all of my friends and all of my family in there, and we were gay and straight and white and black and poor and rich and married and divorced. We were such a coat of many colors. And my 80, well, she's 80 now, she was in her 70s then, but Baptist Southern grandmother just loves and still to this day talks about every single one of you. None of that stuff mattered. All that mattered was that you all loved me, and you all are now part of the family. And I'm so that's one of the positive things that I've taken from that. Kind of going back a little bit to the hospital before I went home. So at one point, the nurses had everyone leave the room because I had to go through the rape test. And I guess they didn't close the door all the way. And Lisa Saint didn't know what was going on and just walked in. And there I was, fully exposed. Another stranger between my legs, doing whatever they have to do for a rape test. And that's one thing that has really stayed with me is I just keep getting embarrassed. I keep getting humiliated from what he did, and different actions keep happening. Like one time, I well past, several months had passed, and I had actually went to meet some friends at a restaurant for dinner, and I had ordered a glass of wine, and the manager, the server went and got the manager. The manager walked up to the table and said, "I'm sorry, we saw the way you walked in here. We can't serve you." I still had a limp. I'd had nothing to drink. I'd ordered a glass of wine with my steak, and they refused my service because I guess they didn't think I looked like I would have a disability. And so it's like all these little things just kept happening that just kept knocking me down. So any kind of progress I was making, when I would have to pat myself on the back because I got to stand up and pee for the first time, or when I pat myself on the back because I walked to the mailbox with a walker for the first time, then when I would go to Walmart or a restaurant to have a dinner and I get knocked back down. And I just felt like he was always, even still to this day, I feel like he keeps winning.
Well, I hope that through this podcast and through talking about all of these things with so many different people that we're going to talk to and share experiences, that along with continuous therapy and everything that you need in order to get you there is going to help. I really, that's my purpose for being here and making sure that, I'm in this 100% with you to the end till you can find some sort of, not even really closure, because I don't think that's ever going to happen, because you're never, like you said, going to know the full story, and people are always going to have their opinions, um and their, you know closed-minded thoughts, and hopefully some open-minded thoughts, and some amazing people that will support you through this. I just think that, you need it, and you need to discuss it, just like all the victims do. And we need to be able to talk about it, even though there's been, numerous times where we've talked about, how much you talk about it. I mean,
Yeah.
even in the beginning, like there were, I know I'm scattered, but, these are just all the thoughts that are coming to my mind as we discuss it. It's, in the beginning, you weren't yourself.
Yeah.
Because it consumed you so much, and all of your friends, even though we were all trying to support and be with you, it was our train of thought that getting you out back into the same life that you were in prior to this happening would be healing for you,
Right.
and getting you back into those situations, would probably make you come back to yourself a little quicker. But you kept talking about, um, all of these things that happened. So tell me, what it was that made it to the point that you felt like you needed to talk about it all the time.
So, you know how I, a few minutes ago, mentioned that when I was in my grandmother's living room and everybody was there, and, I saw how much love and support I had. I didn't know what was about to come. I didn't know about the death threats. I didn't know that people would blame me and that I would be made fun of and put down. And so I had also mentioned how one of my fears is when people would say, "Remember when?" So all I knew, and all I knew for sure, and for the longest time, is I'm a victim. All I knew for sure is what had happened to me. And
And you really didn't know that.
And I didn't know that. I thought I was a victim until people started telling me I wasn't, and that caused a lot of doubt and self hate, and blaming myself and questioning myself when that should never happen for any victim. But that's what happens, and where so many people were hearing the story from the news when they use the word allegedly. The newscaster that shared the story, she had contacted my family, wanted to come to the hospital and interview me, and they were like, no, he can't talk to anybody. He can't even talk to us. You're not welcome here. So she went to the police department and got the police report, and that's what she based her story off of. Well, my attacker told the police, well, I tried to kill him because he sexually propositioned me. When come to find out that never happened, but in his mind, he thought that if he said that, the good old boys from the South would justify what he did and he would be fine. Well, that's the story that gets released. That's where the death threats started coming in. That's where people wanted to finish the job because the gay guy went to a straight bar and tried to take a straight man home for sex. And
let's talk about that straight bar thing for a moment, because what makes the difference between, I mean, why do people think there are such things even today? Like, why is that a label that we have to even put on anything? Because it's a bar, and everyone, no matter what, should be welcome there, right? So,
and I agree, but it's coming from two open-minded people.
right.
Of course, the ones that are saying it are the ones that either A, have something to hide that they're embarrassed of, or they're ignorant. I mean, this is the South. And unfortunately, it's just where
We've
we
made
are.
strides, but we're not there yet.
100%. And so, back to talking about it so much it was, I guess, kind of became a defense mechanism. I felt that if I keep talking about it and each time a new person's around, if I bring it up, then A, they can't make fun of me because I'm strong enough to bring it up myself. And B, I can set the record straight. So it became a defense mechanism. It was the way that I could try to fix something that was completely out of my control, which was driving me insane. I was humiliated all the time. Like I would go to Walmart and this one lady and she met nothing but love out of it. Her motherly instinct kicked in when she seen me, and she came up and she grabbed me and she hugged me and she's like, I've been following your story. I'm so glad you're doing well. But it was a stranger grabbing a victim of a hate crime. Like someone that went through some trauma. That was a huge trigger. I appreciate that, but even with her, I wanted to say, well, and just so you know, this is not what happened. This is the story was based on this. It was my way of trying to save face because I was already embarrassed of the way that I was having to walk. I was embarrassed of how skinny I got. I was embarrassed of my memory or lack thereof. Um, so it was just a way of me trying to redeem myself.
And fast forward to now, like, even though you still don't have all of the answers, and even though that you still, feel embarrassed every day of specific things and different things that are happening, how do you feel that you have been able to get to the point where you can talk about it and where that you can share this story?
I was in individual therapy for a year, and with Helen Ross McNabb, which is it saved my life. And then from there, I still with Helen Ross McNabb, but I went from individual therapy to group therapy, where I'm in with several other men that are some sort of a survivor from sexual assault. Most of them are victims of child molestation, but hearing their stories and being able to have that place where I can departmentalize where I share and when to release those emotions has been healing within itself. Um, and I have just done a lot of reading and a lot of self loving and healing and trying to bring awareness within myself of what happened to me and what part I did play in it. And I finally came to the conclusion that, you know, the thing, and I've said this actually for a long time, but if this was going to happen to someone, at least it happened to someone like me. We know so many gay people that would have laid there and died because they didn't have or they don't have the family and friends that I had that would not allow it. And if I can just change one thing, if I can just help one person, then that's what I want to do. So I've been wanting to do this for a while. I thought that you would be great with it because you know how to reel me in, but you also know how to release me, and I feel safe with you, and I can also laugh and have a good time with you because I don't want this to just be a dark, ugly, scary thing. I don't want someone to push stop on this and feel down. Like I want to end it with some kind of positivity and someone know that there is hope because we're all victims of this in one way or another. You know, I mean, you're going to remember till the day that you die the way that you saw me and what I had to go through and worry if that's going to happen to your grandson or if that's going to happen to your daughter, you know, or if it's going to happen to another friend. Like, we're all victims of this.
And we also look at it from a situation of what if I were to run into him today? Like how am I going to react if I meet this man? Because if my daughter, is dating someone that may know him, um, because they're in the same kind of age range there together and we're from the same area. So, I mean, it could happen.
Right.
And if that were the case and it did occur, how would I handle that? I mean, I'm pretty sure I know.
I'm pretty sure I know too. So I will always have a little bit of cash stashed away.
Good thing, because we'll need bail money.
We will need bail money. And it's like the courts wanted me to have some kind of piece of, oh, there's a restraining order. But isn't there always just an unspoken restraining order? If I don't invite you into my home, if I don't invite you into my body, or if I do invite you in and ask you to get out of my home or my body, and if you don't, then you violated. And so
it should be black and white, but for some reason it's very gray.
Right. And so the courts want me to feel safe and secure that they have a piece of paper on file. And that's just not the way.
Doesn't do it for us. It's not ever. And when you're a victim of something and it happens this close to home, a piece of paper isn't going to make it right.
Right. Well, I feel like maybe this is a good place to stop. Of course, throughout each episode, we're going to touch a little bit on this and speak with people that have been a part of my recovery, and of course, people that have went through their own assault or abuse or tragedy. So, thank you for doing this with me. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find us?
If anyone wants to share their story or show support to all the strong, amazing people that are going to be sharing their story with us through this podcast, please like and follow us on Facebook at Surviving Abuse Podcast or email us at survivingabusepodcast@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to download our episodes via Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Heather. We will probably talk again next week.
See you then.
All right. Bye, everybody.